Okay, so welcome to another episode of Critical Weight Theory. And this time, in this episode, we're going to be looking at the perils of high expectations tainting revolutionary ideas. And, another way to put it might be the unforeseen consequences. And, the main focus will be negative consequences. The point of this podcast right now is to explore the unexpected outcomes of human actions and endeavors, and particularly those that seem revolutionary in nature. I'm your host. My name's Wade, and those high expectations, they have a potential to lead us down some unforeseen and potentially ugly paths. So our journey begins this time with a profound quote from Friedrich Nietzsche. I may be mispronouncing his name, but we're going to plow right on ahead. So, in his famous badass quote, he says, "He who fights with monsters might take care lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze for long into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you." Really a classic quote, and it's potentially one that could even send a chill or a shiver up your spine. It's kind of a freaky quote and an awesome one. But anyway, I think about that when I think about the fight against Nazis and fascism. That whole ideology, or really any sort of authoritarian idea. One of the dangers of authoritarianism is that if you want to fight it, you must have to become more authoritarian yourself. So that's what I think of when I think of that quote. I think those words hold a timeless truth, warning us about the dangers of losing ourselves in our pursuits, especially when our ambitions are driven by high expectations. That almost sounds odd to say, especially when they're driven by high expectations rather than low expectations. But sometimes, if you have grand ideas, you're a little bit too quick to overlook the negative aspects of them. Right? You're a little bit to this or to that, and and you're not willing to look at the whole picture. You're kind of sidestepping things at times. So let's consider also sort of a humorous way of looking at things, like the case of New York City, a bustling metropolis that epitomizes ambition and aspiration. It was almost a godlike place to me when I was young. I always heard, if you were to go to New York, it'd be like a majestic place, right? But in a satirical piece by The Onion titled 8.4 million New Yorkers suddenly realize New York City is a horrible place to live, we're presented with a humorous yet poignant reflection on the consequences of unmet expectations. The piece highlights how the sheer magnitude of expectations in a city of such scale can lead to disillusionment and discontent among its inhabitants. And sure enough, when I went to New York City, I actually had a pretty bad time. I didn't really like the place, to be honest. In fact, I have sort of a story that has a bit of a history. When I visited New York, I was nearly arrested. I was sitting on the steps of a building, tying my shoe, and then a cop came along and harassed me, as if I was some sort of criminal. And he was really, it seemed like he really was trying to find an excuse to throw me in jail. And I was with a group of tourists from the Midwest. We were basically just high school kids, but he was accusing us of, being drug dealers, being prostitutes, who knows what. But we're all just, for the most part, dorky looking kids from rural Michigan, you know what I mean? But it really goes to show you that you can have bad experiences that will permanently impact how you see a supposedly majestic place, in this case, New York City. But I suppose that could be true of anywhere you go. Any place where they say, oh, it's going to be great, the reality will often make it seem less than great. But New York City is just one example. Across ideologies, whether socialist or capitalist, the story remains the same. Both sides anticipate fulfilling their desires through their chosen systems, and they can only find themselves grappling with unintended outcomes a lot of the time, Like, sure, some of the people see the benefits of these ideas, but a lot of people will only be left with the struggles. And the allure of instant gratification blinds us to the potential pitfalls of our actions, as exemplified by the notion of economic democracy happening virtually overnight, or the expectations of limitless prosperity when it comes to, the majestic system of capitalism, this thing that I'm constantly told is so great. Yet at the same time, a lot of these same people who defend it will sort of shrug their shoulders at times and say, "Well, it's the best thing we've got. It's better than Stalinism or whatever." Like, really, that's your best defense, is that it's better than a dictatorship. Like, okay, except like when you really cut to the core, capitalism is also a bunch of little mini dictatorships, and really they can be oppressive, and they're also propped up by the state. The government actually protects business because it's a legal entity, and when you look at the entire spectrum of the economy, you have a global system that has laws being applied globally, and it starts to become less about, an invisible hand, magically guiding things through benevolent forces, and it becomes more about, well, who owns the place, you know what I mean? Like, it's no longer just some fancy concept or an ideal. It's something that becomes less than ideal. And if you're one of those people who really only looks at the absolute storybook version of it, well, you're sort of not going to get the full picture. And in this case, it's very common for people, including people on the left even, to overlook how deeply ingrained the government actually is in capitalism. I mean, every step of the way, it's a legal process. There are legal threats behind virtually every decision. And, that's not to say every aspect of it is negative or even threatening in a particular way, but it's just a fact. It's not like I'm sitting here saying this as an ideological thing. It's not like I'm saying this just because I've read Marx or something like that. No, it's just the way things are, and you can easily find that out. So as we dive deeper, we realize that expectations extend beyond mere economic aspirations. They permeate our societal norms and personal lives, influencing everything from our daily routines to our fundamental values. In our quest for comfort and efficiency, we risk erasing the very essence of revolutionary thought, or innovative thought, however you want to put it. The willingness to challenge norms, break barriers, and confront uncomfortable truths. So, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I think he captured this sentiment eloquently in his commencement address at Oberlin College in 1965. He spoke of the courage to follow one's conscience, even when it goes against the tide of popular opinion. King's words remind us that revolutionary ideas are born from moral conviction and a refusal to compromise on certain principles. rather than from a desire for convenience or conformity. You know, it's it's one of those things. It's just one of those things. What can be said about it? The process of revolution is not always swift or straightforward. The revolutionary changes in society that seem to more improve our lives than damage them. It requires patience, perseverance, and above all, a collective effort to effect meaningful change. As we navigate the complexities of our world, we must remain vigilant against the temptation to discard inconvenient truths in favor of a more comfortable existence. That's again getting to the idea of high expectations versus reality. Like you might really value your own judgment or your own beliefs, and you let those kind of cloud your vision ahead. You're no longer seeing reality as it is. You're no longer letting reality necessarily shape your next steps as much as it should be. Because at the end of the day, reality is reality. It's not just an idea that's in your head. Well, unless you're truly going to convince me that the Matrix is real or something like that. But now we're getting sidetracked. In the end, the path we choose, whether gradual or sudden, will shape the course of history. It's up to us to heed the warnings of Nietzsche, embrace the spirit of revolution embodied by King, and confront the consequences of our expectations with courage and integrity. See, the point I was trying to make about MLK is that he somehow managed to blend, high expectations and reality. He wasn't bogged down in just seeing a grand vision or something like that. He also was down in the trenches. He didn't just give up and all that kind of stuff. He was actually engaged in reality. And that's really one of the main points I guess I'm trying to make here. So I'd like to thank you for joining me on this journey through the idea of facing perils of high expectations. And, next time in the future, well, I don't know exactly when, but, I'll probably look at some more unforeseen consequences. Remember to question, reflect, and above all, expect the unexpected. So that basically ends the episode. Hopefully you were able to make sense of what I was saying. Hopefully what I said made some sense for you. I'm not sure, but it's always fun throwing these ideas out there, and hopefully some people will get something out of them. I don't know. All right. Bye-bye.